No matter what it is, games and movies have been predicting the future for years. Whether it be The Simpsons, who have predicted more things than people can count, or some really small game that predicted something minuscule, there are so many pieces of entertainment that are going to have some correct predictions. All the games on this list are actually relatively old and predicted some pretty crazy things that happened in the past. Do keep in mind that some of the historical things that these games predicted are very serious and aren't to be taken lightly. We aren't trying to be disrespectful by mentioning them. We also aren't trying to put the blame of these things happening on the games themselves. So with that out of the way, here are 7 games that predicted the future. Homefront came out back in 2011 and it was pretty big at the time. The series did get a sequel, but it didn't really get the recognition it deserved. The game takes place in 2027 and it is about America being crippled by an EMP strike that took out most of the country's power. Because of this, Korea is threatening the country with nuclear war, and a revolution starts to pop up to stop them from going through with the war. What makes this game unique is the prediction that it made. The game came out back in 2011, and that is when Kim Jong-il was the leader of North Korea in real life. In the game, that same leader dies in 2012, and Kim Jong-un comes into power. Sounds very familiar, right? Yes, Kim Jong-il did pass away of a heart attack back in December of 2011, which was a couple weeks off of the game's predictions. Kim Jong-un also stepped into power, so the game's predictions were almost spot on. It is difficult to make a game based on war and not have some sort of correct prediction. The first Ghost Recon game came out back in 2001 and was pretty big. From that game, a ton of sequels started to come out and turned into a huge franchise. It's pretty unique because the plot of the game. Some people don't think it was a coincidence at the time, but the game is about a war between Russia and the country of Georgia. Yes, there is a country called Georgia if you didn't know already. It's on the border of Russia, and the Ghost Recon team is sent to help out with the war effort. Little did people know that in the exact year the game takes place, Russia would actually start a war with the same country. In 2008, the same year the game takes place, Russia invaded Georgia and started the Russo-Georgian War. It's kinda scary to think that this is real, but it is history and we can't forget about the past. Obviously there were no Ghost Recon teams in real life, but there might have been. So if you do end up playing Ghost Recon, just have some respect for the actual world events that happened since then. Elite Dangerous is an MMO space game that allows you to explore a huge galaxy in a spaceship. It isn't as complicated as, let's say, Star Citizen, but it's absolutely massive. The game takes place in the Milky Way galaxy and allows you to explore over 400 billion stars and planets. Yes, most of them are empty, but each one has materials and locations to explore. It is definitely better than Starfield when it comes to exploration. There's also a DLC that allows you to get out of your ship and run around on foot. But the cool thing is that the game has a solar system called TRAPPIST-1, and it mirrored an exact solar system that NASA discovered way later than the game released. So the developers predicted a whole solar system. It even had the same mappings of planets that the real solar system has, and it is the same distance from Earth. It's crazy to think about, but they had to at least get one solar system right if they had so many to make in the first place, right? Death Stranding is one of those games that people either love or hate. There really is no in-between. With the trailer for Death Stranding 2 released, everyone who liked the game are eagerly waiting for the sequel to arrive. The game released back in 2019, and everyone who knows what happened in the following year will know where we're going with this. In Death Stranding, there's a massive global pandemic that forced everyone to hide in bunkers and safe zones. This pandemic was because of some dimensional time rift that opened up and let out these beings called BTs, and it made if so you died, then you would cause a void out, which is a massive explosion. It is odd, but not nearly as dangerous as what happened to the world in 2020. Everyone knows of COVID-19 and the lockdowns, so it was odd to see some sort of prediction from Death Stranding. And it was weird it was a year after the game had initially released. Kojima is known for putting all sorts of correct predictions in his games, so it is no wonder that this game predicted something so big. Metal Gear Solid 2 was released back in 1990, which is actually insane. It follows a world in which gasoline and oil were very scarce and the world was fighting over it. The game's solution to this was the use of an algae to use as a fuel source. The game has a character create fuel out of an algae in 1999, and the name of the fuel was Botrococcus burani, and it created the company called Oilix. This algae fuel and gas is what the world was fighting for. In 2012, a company called Solazyme created a fuel from algae just like the game, which made fuel better for the environment since it emits less toxic fumes. The fuel is called Biodiesel B20, and it is still used today. It is crazy to think that a game from the 90s could predict something that big in the real world. Maybe the people saw the game and wanted to make it a reality. Deus Ex came out back in 2000, and it predicted something very big that happened. The game takes place in 2052, and the world is in chaos. Terrorists everywhere are openly killing people with bioweapons, disease, and pollution. There's also a huge conspiracy that the main character has to figure out. It definitely isn't a very pleasant game if you look at it on the surface. The thing that Deus Ex predicted were the attacks on 9/11. Yes, this topic isn't that fun to talk about, but it is in history, and people did lose their lives that day. In the game, a few missions take place in New York City, and the Twin Towers aren't there. It's also in the lore that terrorists ended up destroying the towers, but it is not clear how they were destroyed in the game. It is kind of eerie to know that the attacks happened a year after the game released, but we are aware that the developers did not know that was going to happen, and we hope that they didn't feel any sort of guilt by putting that in the game. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is one of those games that millions of people love, and for good reason. It is a hack and slash game about a man named Raiden, who was a child soldier. He was turned into a cyborg with superhuman abilities and given a katana to deal with his enemies. In the game, the main antagonist has the protagonist defeated, and he says something that is very familiar to those in the United States. "They will make America great again," is what he says to the main character, and if you know anything about that statement, you will know that it is one that a lot of people either love or hate. We aren't going to get political in this video, but it is hilarious to see that the game has this statement. The MAGA statement could have been taken from the game, or thought of without it, but it is funny how the statements are so similar. Either way, it makes for a great story. Most of the games on this list are over 15 years old at this point, and have all had some decent predictions in them. Do keep in mind that all historical things said in this video were for informational purposes and not to be taken lightly. So we hope that you are respectful towards the people who lost their lives in all the different wars and attacks. We hope you enjoyed the video, and make sure you give it a like if you found any of the information enjoyable. We also have a gaming podcast where we talk about the latest games releasing and stuff we're playing. All links are in the description, and thanks for watching.